I sat in the darkness of the living room, the only light coming from the nightlight on the desk, casting a faint glow on the ceiling. My hands were shaking as I held Emma's phone. I never thought I would be the type to pry into someone's private life, especially the life of my wife, whom I had loved for over 8 years, from college to marriage. But tonight, I couldn't help myself. The phone screen lit up in the darkness, and the text message appeared as clear as a punch in the face. Can't wait to feel your touch again tonight. Shock coursed through me like a cold current. Those tiny words made my heart pound, not with emotion, but with pain. Each word echoed in my head, as if trying to be engraved into my mind, reminding me that everything I believed in had collapsed. I looked down at the wedding ring on my hand, the light from the screen making it sparkle ironically. I remembered the day I gave it to Emma, in the warm summer sun, when we vowed to be together for better or for worse. But now, that vow seemed like a joke. She was no longer the woman I loved, and perhaps I was no longer the man she believed. How did things come to this? I tried to remember the first signs, the little details that I had previously overlooked or refused to believe. Emma had been taking more time to get ready for work. She had changed her hairstyle, started wearing perfumes I'd never seen her wear before. She had been spending more time in the office, with late-night meetings and business dinners. I tried to convince myself that it was just the stress of work, that she was trying to get ahead in her career. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. The way she looked at me had changed. Where her eyes used to be warm when she looked at me, now they were just cold glances. Our conversations became less frequent, replaced by long, awkward silences. Weekend evenings that we used to spend watching movies together or cooking became phone time, especially the phone. Emma started carrying it everywhere. She changed the password, and every time I walked into the room, she would quickly lock the screen. The private calls, the messages she never let me see, all of it slowly built up an undeniable picture. I used to think I was just being paranoid, that I was overreacting. But now, with this message in my hand, it all became clear. My suspicions weren't just a nightmare I imagined, they were real. My heart pounded as I clicked on the conversation. The previous messages flashed through my mind, stabbing me like knives. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for our next meeting. You look stunning in that dress today. I'll sneak out early so we can have more time together. Each message was a testament to betrayal. Anger boiled inside me, but I tried to stay calm. I didn't want to destroy the house I had once called home in an emotional outburst. I needed to understand better. I needed to know everything. But more than anger, I felt hurt. I had given Emma my love, my trust, my life. We had been through the early hardships together, the days when we barely had enough money to get by, the big dreams we'd built together. How could she do this to me? How could she betray the beautiful memories we shared? But the answer doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I faced the truth. I put the phone down on the table and took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I felt like I was at a crossroads, where every decision would shape my future. I could confront Emma now, demand an explanation, and reclaim what little dignity I had left, or I could wait, gather more evidence, and understand the depth of this betrayal before making a final decision. The desk lamp was still dim in the living room, illuminating a small part of the empty space. I felt like my home, once a symbol of love and safety, was now a cage, trapping me in pain and confusion. I walked to the window and looked out at the quiet street outside. The night sky was still clear and peaceful, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions raging inside me. I wondered, could I get through this? Would I be strong enough to let go and move on? The answers have yet to come. But one thing I know for sure, my life will never be the same again. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when Emma was my whole world. I remember vividly the day we first met, at an architectural design seminar in college. I was a junior and she was a senior in marketing. She showed up in a light floral dress, her brown hair loose, and a smile that I couldn't take my eyes off. We happened to be in the same discussion group. Emma was not only intelligent, but also had a captivating and passionate way of speaking. She talked about the creative advertising campaigns she was working on for a student project, and I was captivated by her every word. At the end of the session, I mustered up the courage to ask her out for coffee, and to my surprise, she immediately agreed. The following months were a series of wonderful moments. We spent hours in the library, she reading books on marketing strategies, and I sketching designs. Emma was always supportive in everything I did. She was not only my lover, but also my companion and confidant. Whenever I doubted myself, she was the first one to encourage me, reminding me of the big dreams I was pursuing. After graduating, Emma started working for a small marketing agency, and I interned at an architecture firm. Those early days were tough. Rent, bills, and living expenses were sometimes more than we could handle, but Emma always found a way to make ends meet. She never let me feel pressured by myself. "We'll get through this together," she would say, and I believed that more than anything. When I proposed to Emma, it was a beautiful late autumn day. We were walking in the park. The leaves were falling everywhere, covering the paths. I had been planning the ring for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. When I got down on one knee and asked, her eyes were sparkling with tears, and her happy smile was all I needed. We had a small, intimate wedding, with just our family and close friends. It was the happiest day of my life. I remember vividly the moment Emma walked down the aisle in her white dress, took my hand, and said her vows. "No matter what happens, I will always be here for you," she said, and I believed every word. The first years of our marriage were like a dream. We rented a small but cozy apartment where we cooked together, watched movies, and shared our future plans. Emma loved her work, and I began to progress in my architectural career. We often planned small trips, exploring new places together. Every day with her was a lucky day. But then things began to change. The change didn't come suddenly, but crept in like tiny cracks on the surface of a pane of glass. At first, I didn't notice, or perhaps I chose to ignore it. Emma became busier with work. The romantic dinners together began to decrease. She often came home late, citing overtime or business meetings. I tried not to think too much about it, believing it was just a difficult period. But then, the little things added up, and I couldn't ignore them anymore. She began to pay more attention to her appearance, spending hours getting ready before going to work. Every morning, I would see Emma standing in front of the mirror, trying on outfits she had rarely worn before. She changed her perfume, choosing something sexier, stronger. None of this was unusual, but inside me, a sense of insecurity grew. Our conversations became less frequent. Where Emma used to be excited about her day at work, she now responded only vaguely. I noticed she avoided eye contact with me, and often kept her phone on her hand throughout the evening. Once I asked her who she was talking to, and she just smiled and said, "Just work stuff." But I know that's not true. One time, on our 5th wedding anniversary, I planned a surprise for her. I cooked her favorite meal, bought a bottle of wine from our honeymoon, and even decorated the table with small candles. But when Emma got home, she didn't pay any attention to what I had prepared. Instead, she just sighed and said, "You don't need to make things so complicated. I'm tired after a long day." That evening, I sat alone in the kitchen, looking at the meal I had spent the afternoon preparing. I felt like an extra in her life. But even then, I tried to convince myself that we were just going through a difficult phase. "It will get better," I told myself. But now, looking at that message on her phone, I realized I was wrong. Emma wasn't just distant. She was completely out of the life we had built together. The past cannot be changed, but the present is forcing me to face the bitter truth. The woman I love, the one I promised my whole life, has betrayed me. And the most painful thing is not the betrayal, but the realization that I overlooked so many signs because I trusted our love too much. I closed my eyes, trying to remember the happy days before, but those beautiful memories now only left me feeling empty. It was all just a dream that had vanished, and now I had to face the nightmare of reality. In the days after reading that message, I couldn't live normally anymore. Feelings of insecurity, anger, and pain seemed to swallow up every thought. Every little gesture of Emma's now became a big question mark. I realized that instead of stubbornly believing, I needed to know the truth. The next morning, I sat quietly in the kitchen, watching Emma get ready for work. She looked perfect, as always. A figure-hugging dress, lightly curled hair, and flawless makeup. All the things she used to only do when we had a special date. "Do you want me to bring you some coffee?" Emma asked, giving him a wry smile. I shook my head. "No need. I can make it myself." She nodded, grabbed her bag and phone, and disappeared through the door. But when I heard the car drive away, I didn't feel relief. Instead, I felt like I'd been left in an empty house, a shell of what had once been. I started to pay more attention to Emma's actions. First, the timing. She used to leave work at 6 and go home soon after, but lately she was coming home late, sometimes 8, even 9. When I asked her, she always said she had a meeting or an urgent project. At first, I believed her, but after reading that text, I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. I tried calling her office once around 7 p.m., but no one answered. Part of me wanted to confront her right away, but another part said I needed to wait, needed to gather more evidence. The next thing that made me suspicious was her phone. Emma always had her phone with her, even in the bathroom. Before, she would leave it on the kitchen table or in the living room without worrying. But now, her phone was almost always with her. She also changed her password, which was something she never did before. I knew that to find out the truth, I needed to break through the facade she was putting up. And so I did something I never thought I would do. I snooped through her phone. One evening, while Emma was in the shower, I saw her phone on the kitchen counter, as I knew that if I missed this opportunity, I might not get another. My heart was pounding as I picked up the phone. Luckily, she didn't lock the screen. I opened my messaging app and started scrolling. Casual conversations with friends, family, and then a name I didn't recognize, David. My heart skipped a beat as I opened that conversation. Messages filled with affection, compliments, and secret plans were all in plain sight. Are you free tomorrow night? I have reservations at the restaurant. I can't stop thinking about you since the last time I saw you. You are absolutely the best thing that has ever happened to me. Each message was like a knife stabbing at my heart, but what hurt me the most wasn't the words, but the way Emma responded. She smiled, joked, and even suggested meetings. It wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a real relationship. I took pictures of all the messages and saved them to my phone. I knew I couldn't face Emma right away. I needed more proof, needed to know the depth of this betrayal. Over the next few days, I began to follow Emma. I felt like a detective, but also like a stranger in my own marriage. I kept an eye on her schedule. One Thursday, Emma said she had a late meeting and might not be home until 9. But when I drove up to her office at 7, I didn't see her car. I waited another 30 minutes and then decided to drive around the area. Finally, I saw her car parked in front of a small pub where she was sitting with David. Through the window, I could see them laughing and talking, as if they were the perfect couple. David put his hand on Emma's, and she didn't flinch. The sight made me want to rush into the bar and confront them both. But I held back. I knew I needed to stay calm. I quietly took a few photos from a distance and left. I felt both hurt and angry inside. How could she do this to me? How could she smile at him when, just a few hours ago, she was still saying, "I love you," to me? Finally, I decided to install security cameras in my house. I didn't just want to know the truth. I wanted irrefutable proof. I installed a small camera in the living room where Emma often took her private calls, and another near the front door. A few days later, I got what I needed. One evening, while I was pretending to go to bed early, I saw Emma sitting in the living room, talking on the phone. Through the camera screen, I heard her voice, soft, even a little coy, saying to David, "I miss you too. I wish we could see each other longer." I clenched my fists, trying not to do anything stupid. Everything was so clear now. I had no more doubts. Emma, the love of my life, had betrayed me in a way I never expected, but I wasn't ready to face it. I wanted to know the whole truth before I made a final decision. I began to monitor her emails, log her texts, her bank transactions, her dinners and hotels. Piece by piece, the picture of betrayal began to fill in. Every day, I feel like I'm living a nightmare. But at the same time, I know that I need to be strong. I need to stay calm, gather everything I can before facing her and David. And then, when everything became clear, I knew that the time had come to act. I would not only face the truth, but make them understand that every action had consequences. Emma and David would pay for this betrayal, not with violence or anger, but with cold, inescapable truth. I had prepared myself for the first confrontation, and the first person I chose to confront was not Emma, but David. Not only was he the one who had ruined my marriage, but he was also a complicit and smug person who thought he could cross any line without consequence. That evening, after Emma left the house saying she needed to go to the gym. I sat in the living room, waiting patiently. I knew her plan from the security cameras. David would come over after I worked late. I had been trying to give them a false sense of security for the past week, pretending not to know anything and continuing to act like a normal, loving husband. At 8 o'clock sharp, the door creaked open. I sat in the dark, a glass of whiskey in my hand, watching David enter the living room. He was dressed smartly, in a white shirt and loose tie, as if he had just gotten off work, the scent of expensive perfume wafting through the air. He looked around, probably searching for Emma, but his eyes fell on me instead. "Surprised, David?" I said, my voice low and cold, breaking the silence. David froze, his face turning from surprise to confusion. I thought Emma was here." I put my whiskey down on the table, stood up, and looked straight at him. "No, she's not here. But I am. And I think we need to talk. Look, I don't know what's going on, but I think I should go," David said, stepping back, his eyes glancing quickly toward the door. "Sit down." My voice was firm, devoid of any emotion, but strong enough to force him to sit on the sofa. David reluctantly complied, though his eyes were still searching for an escape route. I sat across from him, keeping my gaze cold. "Do you know who I am, David?" "Listen, Alex, if this is about work or anything—" "I'm not asking about work," I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp. "I'm asking, do you know who I am?" David swallowed, obviously feeling pressured. "I am Emma's husband." "Good. Then we don't need to beat around the bush." I leaned forward, allowing the light from the desk lamp to illuminate my face. "I know everything. I know how long you and Emma have been seeing each other, where they've been, and what they've been doing. I know everything." David was silent, his face slowly turning pale. He opened his mouth, but I raised my hand, signaling him to be quiet. "Don't make up any excuses," I continued. "Don't try to tell me this is just a misunderstanding. I have the proof, text messages, pictures, and even security camera footage. You think you can walk into my house and fool me?" David took a deep breath, trying to regain his confidence. "Look, Alex, I don't want this to happen. Emma says your marriage is over. She says you're cold towards her, that you don't love her anymore." His words made me laugh, a cold, sarcastic laugh. "Do you really believe those words? Or do you just need an excuse to justify your actions?" David bowed his head, not responding. "You know what I despise the most?" I asked, my voice low and sharp. "It's not just that you ruined my marriage. It's that you thought you could get away with it." I stood up, looking down at him. "This is the consequence of your actions, David. From this day forward, your life will change. I will not attack you physically. That would be too easy and not worth degrading myself for. But I will make sure you understand what you have destroyed, and you will have to live with it forever." David looked up, his eyes filled with fear. "What are you going to do?" "It's simple," I said. "I'll send all this evidence to your company's human resources department. They'll know that you have a habit of flirting and having affairs with your coworkers, especially the married ones. I've also contacted your fiancée, or maybe she's now ex-fiancée. She's very interested in the photos from the Rivera Hotel, where you and Emma spent the weekend together." David paled. "You can't do that. You'll ruin my career." "You destroyed your own career, David," I replied. "I simply brought the truth to light. Any consequences you face are your own doing." I stepped closer to him, looking him straight in the eye. "Now, listen carefully. I don't want to see your face again. You will cut off all contact with Emma. You will not call, you will not text, you will not email. If I find out you are trying to contact her again, I will not only send the evidence to your company, I will send it to every partner you work with. Do you understand?" David nodded, sweat running down his forehead. "I understand. I swear, I will stay away from Emma." "Good." I stepped back, my voice cold. "Now get out of my house. And remember, if I ever see your face again near here, your life will be worse." David staggered to his feet, not daring to look me in the eye. He hurried out of the house, the sound of the door closing behind him signaling the end of his presence in my life. I stood in the living room, breathing heavily. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel relieved. There was only emptiness, a sense of having fought a battle that no one had really won. But I knew this was only the first step. The next person I had to face was Emma, and it wouldn't be any easier. The front door clicked open as Emma walked into the house. It was a familiar sound I'd heard 1,000 times over the past 5 years, but this time it felt foreign to me. She was still wearing her crisp workout clothes, her hair tied back, like she'd just come from the gym. But I knew the truth. I'd been watching her all evening, and I knew she hadn't been to the gym. "Are you still awake?" Emma was surprised to find me sitting in the living room, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the table. "Yeah," I replied, my voice even. "We need to talk." Emma looked confused. "About what? Did something happen?" I looked at her, eyes fixed on her. "About David." The name hit Emma like a slap in the face. She froze, eyes wide, and I could see the panic flash across her face. She recovered faster than I expected, but that only made me angrier. "David?" She feigned surprise, stepping closer to the sofa. "Why do you mention him?" "Sit down." My voice was firm, leaving no room for protest. Emma reluctantly complied. She put her bag down and sat down at the table, facing me. Her eyes kept darting around, as if searching for a way to escape the conversation she knew was inevitable. "I know everything, Emma," I said, my voice low but sharp. "I know about him, about the texts, the dates, the nights you spent together. I know everything." Emma paled. She opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. I took out my phone, opened the photo album, and laid out the pictures I'd taken on the table. The image of her and David holding hands in a bar, their smiles, the intimacy in their eyes. It was all undeniable. "You've been following me?" Emma exclaimed, her voice a mixture of anger and confusion. "I don't need to keep an eye on you," I replied, my voice cold. "You two did it so openly. Do you think you can keep getting away with it forever?" Emma bowed her head, tears starting to fall. "Alex, I don't know what to say. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just what, Emma?" I interrupted, anger rising in my voice. "Just finding pleasure in another man while we were married? Just thinking I would never find out? Or did you just get bored and decide that justified cheating on me?" "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I just felt lonely. We've been apart for so long. I thought you didn't care about me anymore." I chuckled, an unpleasant sound. "So, that's why? Because you felt like I didn't care? What about all the times I tried to talk to you? Tried to take you out to dinner? Tried to reconnect? Do you remember how many times I asked you what you wanted to do, and you just responded with silence?" "I'm sorry." Emma sobbed, grabbing my hand. "I know I was wrong. I don't deserve forgiveness, but please, Alex, give me a chance. We can work through this. I love you." I pulled my hand back, as if burned. "Don't tell me you love me. If you really love me, you wouldn't do this. Love isn't saying one thing and doing the opposite." Emma continued to cry, her excuses mixed in with her sobs. "I just got carried away. I don't know what I was thinking, but I know I was wrong. I'm cutting him off. I'll do anything to make it right." I shook my head, my eyes cold. "Repair? There is nothing to repair, Emma. What you broke cannot be mended. Not only did you betray me, you destroyed everything we had built over the past 5 years. The trust, the love, the respect, it was all gone." Emma fell silent, only her sobs echoing in the room. I stood up, looking at her one last time. "You have 2 hours to pack your things and leave the house. I want you to leave tonight." Emma looked up, her eyes red. "Alex, please, don't do this. I have nowhere to go. It's not my problem anymore." I turned and walked toward the stairs. "You got yourself into this situation. Now take responsibility." As I walked up to the bedroom, I heard Emma crying even louder. It felt like I had just closed a chapter in my life, one that I had hoped would last forever. But now, it was all in ruins. And as painful as it was, I knew that letting go was the only thing I could do to save myself. The house was strangely quiet after Emma left. Her sobs, the final slam of the door, and the sound of her car driving away still echoed in my head like a farewell. I sat down in my usual living room chair, my glass of whiskey now cold. Everything around me seemed drained of life. The pictures on the walls, The decorations we'd chosen together, now just memories of a broken marriage. I looked around the house, once filled with laughter and happy memories. Now it was empty, heavy with betrayal and pain. But even in that emptiness, I felt something new, a sense of relief. Not because I no longer loved Emma, but because I knew I had done the right thing. Staying in a relationship that was rotten out of fear of being alone would only prolong the pain. The following weeks were like a lesson in patience and self-respect. Emma tried to contact me, texted, called from unknown numbers, even came to see me at the office. She apologized, pleaded, promised to change, but I didn't respond to any of her messages. I didn't want to hear from her anymore. I cut off this connection not only to protect myself, but also to start a new chapter in my life. One of the first things I did was meet with a lawyer. I wanted to get this all sorted out, once and for all. The meeting was brief, but meaningful. I presented evidence, text messages, photos, and even videos to ensure that there was no contest to the divorce. The terms of the prenuptial agreement were clear. Emma had no claim to any assets I had built up before or during the marriage, if there was evidence of adultery. When Emma got the divorce papers, she called me, her voice full of anger. "You're trying to ruin my life. Why can't you forgive me? We had everything." I calmly replied, "No, Emma, you ruined your life. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting what happened, and I can't continue living with someone who betrayed me." The call ended quickly, and I felt like I'd cut the last string holding me to the past. But letting go doesn't come easy. There are evenings when I sit alone in the quiet of my house, thinking about the happy days gone by. I miss Emma's smile, the moments when we made plans for the future together, but then the painful memories of betrayal come back, pulling me back to reality. To escape these thoughts, I started focusing on myself. I went back to the gym, which I had neglected because of work and marriage. I took a drawing class to rekindle the passion for design that had led me to architecture. I also spent more time with friends, something I'd neglected over the years. Little by little, I felt myself getting stronger, both physically and mentally. One day, I received news from a mutual friend that Emma had moved to a small apartment in the suburbs. She was working for a smaller company with a much lower salary. I didn't feel elated or satisfied, but only regretful. It was a pity that a woman who had everything had chosen to trade it all for a short-lived and meaningless feeling. David is no better. He was fired after HR received evidence of inappropriate behavior in the workplace. His fiancée, whom I contacted, also cut all ties with him. I don't gloat over their downfall, but I know they are facing the consequences of the choices they made. As time went on, I realized that it wasn't the cost to Emma and David that mattered most. What mattered most was that I regained my freedom and self-respect. I learned how to stand up for myself, how to protect myself from harm, and most importantly, how to love myself. One afternoon, I sat in the living room, looking out the window, and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. This house, once a symbol of pain and betrayal, had now become a place for me to start over. Old objects had been rearranged. Pictures on the walls had been replaced. Everything in the house now reflected who I was, not the shadow of the past. One evening, I got a text from Marcus, a close friend. "Want to go for a drink? You've been gone too long." I looked at the message, thought for a moment, then replied, "Give me 30 minutes. Meet at the usual place." It was the first time in months that I allowed myself to go out and reconnect with the world, not to find someone new, but to find myself in the social relationships I had forgotten. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for sure. I will never let anyone make me doubt my worth again. My marriage to Emma may be over, but it taught me valuable lessons about inner strength, about dealing with pain, and about starting over. And with that lesson, I am ready to enter any new chapter in my life with confidence in myself.